Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Today we're digging a little bit deeper into that letter that Sam Altman received earlier this week from a group of US senators. We're going to put that in the context of the changing political landscape and how recent shakeups to the presidential election could impact AI policy in the United States. The senators behind the letter are Brian Schatz, Ben Ray Lujan, Mark Warner, Peter Welch, and Angus King. All of them are Democrats except Angus King, who is an independent technically, but who caucuses with the Democrats. The letter basically starts with the framework that OpenAI is a really important company in a really important sector, and so therefore it is really important that everyone understands what's going on with them. Quote, safe and secure AI is widely viewed as vital to the nation's economic competitiveness and geopolitical standing in the 21st century. Moreover, OpenAI is now partnering with the US government and national security and defense agencies to develop cybersecurity tools to protect our nation's critical infrastructure. National and economic security are among the most important responsibilities of the US government, and unsecure or otherwise vulnerable AI systems are not acceptable. Given OpenAI's position as a leading AI company, it is important that the public can trust in the safety and security of its systems. This includes the integrity of the company's governance structure and safety testing, its employment practices, its fidelity to its public promises and mission, and its cybersecurity policies. The voluntary commitments that you and other leading AI companies made with the White House last year were an important step towards building this trust. And really what this comes down to, or appears to be to me, is a reflection on all the various controversies that OpenAI has seen over the last 6 or 7 months, and a check-in to see where OpenAI's stated commitments lie. So the net impact of this letter is that they want information by August 13th of this year, and let's look at the specific questions they're asking and try to see what they reveal about how this group of senators is thinking about OpenAI. Question 1. Does OpenAI plan to honor its previous public commitment to dedicate 20% of its computing resources to research on AI safety? What they're referring to here is last year when OpenAI announced the super alignment team, part of the more tangible commitment that came with was them dedicating 20% of the computing resources that they had up to that point secured to the super alignment team. Now, a couple things about that. First, it was notable even then to me that the language was 20% of the compute we've secured to date, with, I imagine, the anticipation that they were going to secure a lot more compute in the months and years to come. And so even at that point, 20% might not really have been 20% in the way that, for example, these senators are looking at it, which doesn't distinguish between when the commitment was made and now. But beyond that, some of the reports have been that part of the reason that Jan Leakey and others from the super alignment team left is that they weren't getting those resources. I'm pretty sure that the subtext of this question is accusatory and suggesting that OpenAI is not honoring this commitment. They basically say, if you are going to honor this, what are the steps that you're going to take to honor it? And if not, what percentage of resources are you dedicating to it? The second question once again reveals the recent controversy genesis of this letter. Question 2, can you confirm that your company will not enforce permanent non-disparagement agreements for current and former employees? This has been one of the big dust-ups over the last couple months. That is the reports that OpenAI has acted somewhat vindictively towards employees that were leaving, saying that they would surrender their equity if they didn't sign a non-disparagement agreement. This was definitely a black eye moment from a public perception standpoint. While many people that I talked to who had interacted with big companies like this before didn't think it was all that unusual, but for those who hadn't been through a similar process, it sort of looked like a what do you have to hide kind of moment. Question 3, can you further commit to removing any other provisions from employment agreements that could be used to penalize employees who publicly raise concerns about company practices, such as the ability to prevent employees from selling their equity in private tender offer events? This is really a continuation of that second question, and for OpenAI's part, they've already committed to making these changes in their agreements. It's something that Sam Altman has discussed and apologized for publicly. But still, of course, the bigger question underneath this isn't really about employee equity. It's more what's raised in question 4 from the senators. Does OpenAI have procedures in place for employees to raise concerns about cybersecurity and safety? How are these concerns addressed once they are raised? Have OpenAI employees raised concerns about the company's cybersecurity practices? Question 5, what security and cybersecurity protocols does OpenAI have in place or plan to put in place to prevent malicious actors or foreign adversaries from stealing an AI model, research, or intellectual property from OpenAI? This is one of the drums that former OpenAI member Leopold Aschenbrenner has been beating. He had argued at one point in a memo that the company wasn't doing enough to prevent hacks from China, and while OpenAI have said very strenuously that's not why he parted ways from the company, that's been part of the broad perception. Question 6, the OpenAI Supplier Code of Conduct requires your suppliers to implement strict non-retaliation policies and provide whistleblower channels for reporting concerns without fear of reprisal. Does OpenAI itself follow these practices? You can sense that all of this set of questions is fundamentally about whether the channel for OpenAI employees who see something that scares them is open to actually report that, or at least how difficult is OpenAI going to make it. From there, though, we move to a similar theme, but that relates to how independent actors can interact with OpenAI to assess the safety of its models. Question 7, does OpenAI allow independent experts to test and assess the safety and security of OpenAI systems pre-release? Question 8, does the company currently plan to involve independent experts on safe and responsible AI development in its safety and security testing and evaluation processes, procedures, and techniques, and in its governance structure, such as in its Safety and Security Committee? This question 8 is a little bit out of the blue, in that it seems to be intimating that this group of senators would like to see OpenAI involve independent experts in its safety and security testing and evaluation process, as well as in its governance structure, but you can imagine that a private company might bristle at that sort of suggestion. Then we get to the one that most people are talking about online. Question 9, will OpenAI commit to making its next foundation model available to US government agencies for pre-deployment testing, review, analysis, and assessment? Where we're starting to get in the AI space is moving away from generalities to specifics. There have been vague discussions of the government having advanced access to frontier models before they're released more broadly, but they've always been in the context of some future state of AI capability. The senators are now pushing the question of whether the time is now, and whether GPT-5 is the model to begin with. The final 3 questions are a little bit more blasé. Question 10, what are OpenAI's post-release monitoring practices? What patterns of misuse and safety risks have your teams observed after the deployment of your most recently released LLMs? Question 11, do you plan to make retrospective impact assessments of your already deployed models? Question 12, please provide documentation on how OpenAI plans to meet its voluntary safety and security commitments to the Biden-Harris administration. Now, it's notable that this is not a specific committee. This is just a group of senators, and so whether we'll actually see a broader conversation come for this remains to be determined. What is clear, though, I think, is that it represents a bit of a ratcheting up of the seriousness with which the US government is taking these potential issues, and depending on your perspective, a bit of a noose tightening or a coiling around OpenAI, particularly when it comes to US government visibility into what they're building. Of course, not everyone in the US government has the same perspective on what the US government's role in AI should be. Retiring Congressman Patrick McHenry, who is the current chair of the House Financial Services Committee, recently used a hearing on AI to beat the drum that the US needs to remain the leader when it comes to global innovation. We cannot allow fear of the unknown, he said, to thwart the United States' role as a hub for technological innovation. Far greater than the risks associated with AI itself are the risks of allowing foreign competitors and adversaries to lead the development, adoption, and terms of use. Which of course has brought many to the question of what a new potential Democrat administration, after President Biden announced his withdrawal from the race, could mean when it comes to AI. The New York Times published a piece, a Kamala Harris presidency could mean more of the same on AI regulation. The article notes that Kamala Harris has actually taken a leading role on the White House's efforts on AI, which has frankly been somewhat unusual as she's been fairly sidelined when it comes to policy during her time as VP. The Times points to a speech back from November where Harris said, "We reject the false choice that suggests we can either protect the public or advance innovation. We can and must do both." As many pointed out, given her origins in California, she has more experience with big tech as well. Many in the technology industry who have been uncomfortable with the industry's shift to supporting former President Donald Trump are now trying to rally around Kamala Harris and have suggested that she seems to be more open and less antagonistic towards technology than the previous Democratic president in President Biden. Still, right now, there's no actual information. There's been no new statements. It's not even 100% that Kamala Harris will be the Democratic nominee. But of course, should that come to pass, as it seems like it will have a big impact on how AI could be shaped going forward, and it is something that we will spend more time on the show. For now, though, that is going to do it for the AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace.